David has been a good friend to our team, as was his predecessor, Keith Ridge. And at Keith Ridge's retirement do, he told a very funny story about how on his first week working for the Department of Health, he had to write an answer to a parliamentary question explaining that hospital e-prescribing was going to be rolled out nationally in just the next 18 months. And at his retirement, he told this story and said, that was in 1998. So, David Webb is the lead of the pharmacy profession across the whole country. He's the Chief Pharmaceutical Officer at NHS England. He is also the direct employer of our Brian McKenna, head of our data analytics teams, who was seconded to us for 8 weeks to learn how to write a Jupyter notebook in 2018, and continues to work with us. I think it's 3 days a week with us and 2 with you, which is a fair division of labour. David, thank you.
Good afternoon, colleagues. So this is going to be quite a short presentation for 3 reasons. The first one is, through years of experience, I've learned it's really important not to stand between an audience and canapes. That's the top one. The second one is quite a lot of my speech was actually going to be an acceptance speech about receiving a Bennett Prize, which clearly isn't going to be needed now. And the third point is I have a speaking style that means the audience will need more sodium oxybate than Fred's ever dreamed of in his presentation. So I'm going to try and keep it as punchy as possible, really. More seriously, congratulations to all the prize winners. I thought that was a rather special moment to see how people were using data and making a difference. It was a real pleasure to see that. It's not often I get to come to an event and stay the whole day. Normally that's for protection reasons, but I felt quite comfortable in this community. And it is a real pleasure to be with you. Congratulations to the Bennett Institute, I think, for bringing us all together, putting energy in the conversation. It feels a bit more sort of powered by the BI than other presentations of Power BI we might be more familiar with. And Colin said, data is the new soil, which I rather liked. Being from NHS England, I'm often accused of bringing, shall we say, the organic fertilizer to the conversation, but people use a shorter and more abrupt word usually in that conversation. Anyway, what I'd like to do is, if you like, not drop the baton at this point, because it's been a great day. I just want to sort of, in a sense, give a feel for where the 10-year health plan is going, but also leave you feeling sort of positive about what the future might hold. It is important for me to say, though, that colleagues in the NHS are facing into some real challenges, and for colleagues in particular in ICBs, this is a very uncertain time. So I think it's really important that I acknowledge it and that we hold this sort of duality that we're dealing with at the moment. A, excitement about opportunity, but B, real uncertainty about the future. And this is our tale of 2 cities at the moment, I think, uncertainty and opportunity. Which is why I think the 10-year health plan is actually quite important in this context, because it gives us something to aim for. It's a sense of navigation. And the accurately but prosaically named medium-term planning framework is the sort of itinerary for that journey over the next 3 years. But of course, data, and specifically medicines data, is actually, in my view, the bedrock on which many of these important developments will be built. So, to set the scene a little, we're in a remarkable era of medicines innovation. The NHS is increasing and accelerating the prescribing of essential medicines in relation to treatment for respiratory disease, cardiometabolic conditions, and millions of people rely on these treatments every day. And yet alongside that, we've emerged as a pioneer in the use of cutting-edge technologies, including potentially curative gene therapies for rare diseases such as sickle cell disease, and some of the newest interventions in cancer treatments, as we've just heard. And looking ahead, horizon scanning tells us that quite a number of the next wave of innovations will be just as applicable to treatment in in the community as they are to treatment delivered in hospital settings. And it's in this shift to a more preventative, community-based or neighborhood system that we have a great opportunity. I think this is often framed about demand. I personally think this is about the experience of healthcare as much as managing the demand for healthcare. And as a result of that, 10-year health plan has quite a strong focus on medicines and indeed pharmacy, as this slide shows. I could tell you a little anecdote. So one of the joys of my job is that senior colleagues will say something like, we're going to launch the 10-year health plan tomorrow. Would you mind holding a sort of webinar with your key stakeholders and telling them about it without actually sort of telling me what it's about to speak to the stakeholders about? And they said the most important thing is to get across that it's going to be sort of professionally agnostic. It's not going to talk much about specifics. It is not really going to talk about specific conditions. So, Julie did all of this, calmed everybody down, said, don't expect too much. This is thematic. It's looking to the future. And then, of course, we unveiled it the following day, and there's actually quite a lot about medicines and pharmacy in the 10-year plan. So delighted, but I would have liked to have milked that first moment a little bit more for what it's worth. And I think one of the key messages that comes through for me is about this sense of population health and its improvement and support by robust data, and how in the future, when we start to couple that with the genomic population health service, we're going to see the increasing relevance, I think, of pharmacogenetic test results for individuals and their medicines use across populations. So on to the medium-term planning framework. So this is really the 3-year operational plan, and it builds on this central role for medicines and pharmacy and medicines data, I would say. Planning framework basically asks local NHS organisations to improve access and performance standards across a whole range of core services, sets out the priorities for the 3 strategic shifts we're being asked to make over the next 3 years. And what I've done, this is a bit sort of parochial, but I've picked out the ones that sort of speak to pharmacy and medicines in particular. Interestingly, and we might want to reflect on this, the medium-term planning framework says the NHS must ensure all providers in acute, community and mental health sectors are onboarded to the federated data platform and using its core products. Now, the FDP is operational, but its products and services, I would say, continue to evolve. And currently, about 72 NHS hospital trusts are live on the FDP. I suppose there's an underlying consistency of theme here, which is about core infrastructure connecting existing data across multiple views to create a unified view of information from diverse sources. And I think the FDP has a particular application to support direct patient care, such as ensuring standards of care at admission and enabling effective discharge planning. And another related piece is the ambition around a single patient record, unifying data from multiple sources, making it easily accessible to both patients and health and care professionals, potentially offering an unprecedented level of clarity and detail. It should also enable secure data sharing with trusted third parties, such as researchers and clinical teams, while maintaining patient choice and control. Now, ultimately, the SPR will allow the NHS to use data more effectively, accelerating research and innovation to deliver the treatments of tomorrow. I think from a clinical point of view, it's absolutely fundamental that we are all looking into the same data about our patients and all contributing and respectful of that data, because although we've been pushing forward with a number of pharmacy initiatives, particularly around, shall we say, pharmacy first or independent prescribing and community pharmacies, it is the linkage of the data, the important behind the scenes work that goes on to make sure everybody knows what's happening and what's being done for our patients. So what are our opportunities? Better quality data, more effective use of that data, I think, is fundamental to achieving our 10-year health plan ambitions, as this slide sets out. I think I won't sort of dwell on this too much, but we've heard today that the dispensing data from primary care is of a very high standard and has been so for several years. Data on medicines consumption volume has now also been available for some time now from secondary care through the RxInfo platform, as Colin and other colleagues have outlined. The issue there, I think, is that the data is largely drawn from hospital pharmacy dispensing software, which is mature in its digitization, but it does mean a lot might relate to stock issues and not necessarily be directly related to specific patient groups. And that linkage for the future, I think, becomes increasingly important. So, I know this is sounding a bit secondary care now, but it's just to sort of balance all the great work that's been happening in primary care for some time. So EPMA, and we've heard about the sort of implication, the implementation artifacts of the number of providers we've got and how it's all being put into place. But the thought about EPMA is this can be a major step forward in linking prescribing data to patient records in secondary care. It is expected to create the most extensive data source in the world for secondary care prescribing and drug administration. And the purpose of the data is centered around secondary use for research, perhaps more so than direct patient care. However, at this time, only 29 organizations are feeding data in centrally from their EPMA solutions. And while it's very important to acknowledge the real constraints on trust, it's also crucial that we collectively, I would say, make much better progress on this. There also remain a number, we think less than 10% of NHS hospitals in England that have yet to implement any form of electronic prescribing and remain fully on paper-based processes. Now, there's a further challenge, which I think colleagues have spoken to already, which is the digital maturity assessment, which is a really useful source of information about this sort of thing. It allows you to respond positively to EPMA implementation if you're only doing it in a subset of your footprint or your estate. And some complex medication regimes, such as variable rate infusions, still remain on paper in those settings. There's another limitation to consider in the EPMA data collection requests only from the submitting trust's main EPMA solution. And colleagues may know that in many trusts you may have a main EPMA and then you go into the critical care environment and there's an EPMA there, and in other settings too. So not only have we got sort of variable implementation, but we've got a patchwork quilt of potential sources, including cancer services, theatres, emergency departments, and so on. That, again, hampers our ability to synthesize all of this information. But on the upside, implementation of EPS into secondary care will further increase the use of electronic prescribing and the associated data in secondary care organizations. And I think it was on the slide just before me, there are about 32 trusts that have some form of EPS in action now. So if I think Ben's already made pretty clear what his message to me is on various presentations of information, shall we put it that way, which I fully support. So, he's pushing an open door with me for sure. If I could make an ask back out to the audience, I think for those people who are working with providers and ICBs as strategic commissioners, please go back and make the case for improving our secondary care medicines data, because I think that's critical to our future success. Don't worry, folks, we're into the final furlong. So, medicines value and access. The work we do to drive better value from and access to medicines is directly linked to the medicines data we hold. And that's another key priority in the medium-term planning framework. I don't need to tell this audience that medicines account for nearly 21 billion a year of NHS spend in 21-25, an increase of 20 billion from 23-24. And in this context, medicines data enables us to identify and investigate variation in prescribing, support clinical decision-making through real-world evidence on medicines' effectiveness and safety. We've certainly heard that in the latter sessions today. And I think, importantly, transform patient pathways using insights from medicines' usage patterns. Oh, that was a mic drop, wasn't it? A very subtle way of saying stop now. So I didn't think I could get away from today without saying something about the single national formulary, since this is highlighted in the 10-year health plan, it's in the life sciences sector plan, it's in the medium-term planning framework too. This is going to be a key element of our work on medicines in the coming 2 years. We're intending to deliver a product which includes medicines in a select range of therapeutic areas chosen to meet clinical priority and 10-year health plan commitments. The intention is to provide a vital prescribing decision-making tool for clinicians and transform our ability to track real-time medicines data, enabling us to identify variations in care, accelerate the adoption of best practice, and ensure patients benefit from the most effective treatments. So we're in the foothills of this, and I would say as we develop the work, we'll be looking out to leaders in the systems, their teams, and national stakeholders to ensure we're building the formulary that meets everybody's needs. So just in terms of maintaining sort of blood flow, how many people are, no, how should we say it in the modern, how many people identify with being a pharmacy person? Ooh, so really great on the left wing. It's pretty good with the Liberal Democrats, but the Faragists, there's no pharmacy folk over there in that corner. So if you're not a member of that community, forgive me this, but I just thought it's important to say a little bit about the workforce in all of this context too. And we need to think about new ways that we use and deliver medicines and develop excellent leadership, professional skills, and systems to support that delivery. Significant steps have already been taken to strengthen the digital capabilities of pharmacy professionals. This includes a comprehensive review of existing frameworks that support digital skill development, an evaluation of current digital training provision, and work to create standardized job profiles alongside clear progression routes for clinical informaticians. So taking this together with other developments, such as independent prescribing by community pharmacists, changes in supervision, that sounds very dry if you're not a pharmacy person, but it's the law that dictates how you operate a pharmacy. It's actually bound up in law as opposed to regulation. So we're moving away from that position. That's going to allow much more skill mix and delegation to appropriate individuals, and that will be housed in regulation rather than being part of the legal framework for providing pharmacy services. You put those things together, we get an unprecedented expansion in pharmacy workforce professional practice, and I think that brings opportunities to benefit patients, communities, and populations. And importantly, what I hear from my colleagues is that generates satisfaction with role and an aspiration about career development. And then that seems a very virtuous combination of things. And when it comes to data and digital, as well as pharmacogenomics, I think there's a lot more to come. So just to summarize then, I know everybody in this room is here because they believe there are important things that happen with data, with digital systems, how that translates into patient care. I'm really proud to be able to work with everybody who shares that vision. It's been a privilege to be here today, to enjoy all the presentations, and I wish you all the very best of success in the future. Thank you.
Thanks, boss. I have a ridiculous gift for you if you wait 1 second. Just before you go, thanks to all of our speakers, of course, everyone will get one of these at the end of the day, but this is a bottle number 1 of the 2025 vintage, but bottle number 8 in total in the series of Bennett Institute Port. I can confirm that its total cash value is £15.95, so I think you're safe. And you get extra points if you drink it from a Bennett Institute open prescribing mug. Thank you very much. Thanks. And we have one for all of our speakers, and we'll hand them over at dinner. Thank you very much, David Webb.